And we begin this morning with northwest Nigeria, where 100 women and children who were kidnapped by bandits 6 weeks ago have been freed. The Zamfara state government says they were released without any ransom being paid, but gave no further details. The victims are being given medical checks before returning home. Zamfara has witnessed a surge in attacks by gunmen targeting villages and schools. The group were abducted on the 8th of June this year in Zamfara state, and 4 people were killed during that incident. Well, since December last year, more than 1,000 people have been abducted. Rufai, Dr. Abati, this is good news. Zamfara kidnapped, but it also speaks to perhaps the numbers unaccounted for of people who are kidnapped in this country.
I mean, this was good news that they are back home, but really, is it good news or is it Pyrrhic victory? That's the big question we should ask ourselves. When are we going to have a time where we will not celebrate the return home of kidnapped victims in this country? When are we going to have a time where the security of people in the Northeast and every part of this country is going to be upheld in such a way that they will not need to be kidnapped in the first place? When are we going to have a time where security agents will foil kidnap attempts, will bring kidnappers to book, will kill them, and the people will be protected? When are people going to go back home from their IDP camps? Because you see, for every time we say they've been released, for me it's a Pyrrhic victory. It's a victory that has come with so much consequences that the consequences far outweighs the return itself. Do you know the mental state of these people in Zamfara? Do you know the mental state? Do you know what their families have gone through? Some of them might even have died in the process of waiting for them. This is the time to fight banditry, criminality, and terrorism head on. Because even kidnapping, I tell you, is a form of terrorism. Because you terrorize the person for a ransom. And the government says ransom was not paid. The jury is out on that. Because we know the antecedents as regards negotiation and how people tell us ransom was not paid. In the end, we discover they were paid. So we've heard this narrative one too many times. But for me, that day of true celebration will be the day that they will not even need to kidnap anybody. They will not need to kidnap children. Because even if they are returned them after so many months, the victory is still Pyrrhic for me.
Dr. Bati.
Well, this is what it is. Kidnapping has become big business in Nigeria. We use the word banditry, which is like an umbrella word for kidnapping, for all kinds of criminal activities in Zamfara. But perhaps the most appropriate word is terrorism.
Yes.
Criminals are terrorizing Nigerians, and the Nigerian state proves incapable. In this particular instance, these persons, women and children mostly, they were abducted for about 42 days. And now we are told they've been rescued. Now, that's Zamfara state. The governor of Kaduna state gave a report the other day saying that over 400 persons had been kidnapped in his own state within a space of 2 months, April to June. Okay, maybe you say 3 months. Now, we have another report indicating that between January and now, over 1,000 persons have been kidnapped in Nigeria. So you have this big economy whereby people make money from kidnapping people, terrorizing people, harassing people, dehumanizing people. No government should allow that to happen. And what is demonstrated largely is the failure, the incompetence of the Nigerian government. In this particular case, yes, this has been celebrated to show that, occasionally the government has the capacity to rescue people. We have rescued 100 persons who have been kidnapped for 42 days. Well, what we expect is that the Nigerian government should be in a position to rescue everybody who has been kidnapped,
yes,
and to prevent the kidnapping, yes, of persons.
Yes. Because
what the law says is that the primary duty of government is to secure the people and to make sure that they are in a good condition as citizens. We have quoted that section of the Constitution endlessly on this program. So, well, the police may congratulate themselves, or the security agencies generally, that they have rescued 100. Okay, if the report that we have is that over 1,000 have been kidnapped, how about the remaining people who are still in the custody of kidnappers and criminals? Those persons also deserve to be rescued. And every person must be rescued. Even in this particular case, out of this number, we're told that 24 persons are still with the terrorists who have been kidnapping Nigerians. And that even makes us very sad. Now, we're told that they will be given medical checks and all of that. Yes, okay, medical checks, that's fine, right? But they should go beyond medical checks. Because the big challenge is the trauma, the psychological trauma. Maybe out of these 100 persons that have been rescued, maybe half of them will be suffering now from depression, from bipolar disorder, from anxiety attacks, from panic attacks. So all the experts should be made available to provide the necessary assistance. Well, the police, they're saying this release was unconditional, that they did not pay any amount. Well, I guess many Nigerians will not believe them, because we do not expect that if the Nigerian government paid even a penny, that the government will come forward and say, we paid money to secure the release of these persons. Government having said again and again that it will not negotiate with terrorists and bandits. Now, the other point that was made is that there was an assurance in the negotiation process that these bandits, nothing will happen to them. Now, how can a government go ahead, negotiate with criminals, okay, secure the release of persons? This looks like a banter. So, I mean, if you rescue people and you tell them that nothing will happen to them, because that's what I read in the reports. So, have we reached a stage now in Nigeria where government offers criminals, confirmed criminals, people who abduct people, and government will go and negotiate? The Nigeria police will go and negotiate and say, just give us the people, nothing will happen to you.
Assurance.
It's some kind of assurance. Apologies to Davido that I'm bringing a phrase that he has copyrighted into this matter. Saying that, look, nothing will happen to you. It's a way of saying, okay, we can continue to abduct people. But we have this understanding, we will talk, you will release some people. No, that's tragic. If that is a correct interpretation, that is truly tragic. We will have expected that you collect the people and then you go after them and arrest these bandits. Not to say, don't worry, carry on. You can abduct people as long as we can negotiate, you release some people, then Nigeria is in a good place. No.
No consequences. Very heartbreaking situation you paint there, Dr. Abati, but thank you so much. Thank you, Rifa, as well. That's all on the news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rotus Ojiri, Michael Wilson, myself, as well as Aaron Akarijola to give you updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
All right, welcome back. Still the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. We're going over to Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, nice to be able to talk to you. Absolutely fine here. General worries then globally, inflation, growth, all these kind of things actually pushing the markets one way or the other. This morning, Wall Street came back a bit yesterday from its slight scare drop on Monday, but generally speaking, Asia Pacific stocks are up this morning. Japan is closed for a holiday. Hang Seng's up nearly 2%. What's happened there is that China, Evergrande, the group, up nearly 10%. It's a property group, and they've settled their legal differences with a China bank bank, and that's helped that. Now, we've been talking, I'm sure you've been talking on your general news about the floods in China. I'm sorry to have to put a business thing on this because of the tragedy and everything, but Foxconn, which is the largest manufacturer in the world of iPhones, is saying that its factories are untouched by this. Still a big tragedy for China. Of course, 10,000 people having to be relocated, 25 deaths. But the news from Foxconn is it's saying that there's going to be no shortage of iPhones. Again, a rather callous business concern about this, but something which the markets will be interested in. Let's shift our attention to BHP, which is a huge commodities company, which you know well. Most of its earnings have come from iron ore. It's now up considerably this morning because it struck a deal for its nickel mining. Now, it's expected that the demand, we've often talked about this, about precious metals and so on, nickel demand is expected to increase by 500% over the next decade, and they've done a deal with that as in Australia for the manufacture of electric vehicles. I'm going to recap the United States for you now. That Delta dip, as they're calling it, on Monday, the Delta variant dip, actually most of the markets there have put things behind it. They've shrugged most of it off. I think there is now a bit of concern, again, something we were talking about last week, this problem with Didi in China and the efforts that the authorities there are trying to suppress it and reduce its app facility and so on. The Wall Street banks are looking at that and thinking, is this going to stop the pipeline of very profitable IPOs on Wall Street? And that's something which is concerning them right at the moment. So far, though, not impacting on the markets so far, but of course it will. And Bitcoin, here's one, another tweet from Elon Musk. What he's now saying is that he's also got Ethereum too, so that's helped digital currencies. And he will accept in a few months' time payment for Tesla cars in Bitcoins. Now, I know we've been down this road before, but he's now actually assuming it, and he feels also that Bitcoin mining and the worries that he was talking about in terms of the energy that it consumes in order to do that is becoming slightly greener. Now, again, I rest my case about Bitcoin so far. If you want to invest in it, you have to put up with this kind of volatility, and it could just take the tweet of one man like Elon Musk to get the price up again, well above $30,000, which it dipped below. Right, the main event of the day, as far as most of the markets around the world are concerned, is the ECB. What we're thinking about is what is the ECB at lunchtime, both our lunchtimes today, going to say about its now fixed 2% inflation target. Is the implication then that clearly inflation, because it will spike when Europe finally gets its act together before the end of the year, are they saying that they're going to therefore look through that, and can we expect a more accommodative stance from the ECB in 2022? And of course, any news on quantitative easing would be very gratefully received. I suspect there won't be an enormous amount of detail, but those are the sort of areas which we will be looking at. And Rotas and I will be talking about this later in the day on the Global Business Report. As far as commodities are concerned, a bit of a surprise rally for oil. Analysts I've spoken to this morning, not quite sure why it's happened at all, but it has. Brent crude up over 5%, WTI up over 6%. No great difference from yesterday. What one is suspecting is that a lot of people have been a little short and are getting caught out yesterday with this sort of twist into bigger stocks, which was a feature of Wall Street yesterday, which I was reporting on. And gold, well, again, poor old gold. Well, you say poor old gold, don't you? Its glister is slightly off this morning, given the fact that people are much more risk friendly. In other words, they're going into equities and staying away from safe havens. So really, that's it. The big one today, the European Central Bank again, which I'll be talking about with Rotas later in the day. Global Business Report. That's the global view so far.
All right. Thanks for the insight, Michael. Two things real quickly. It looks as though opening up Freedom Day has brought its blow back. There's a certain app the NHS has to trace people that might be exposed to COVID-19. That Ping app, it's causing a lot of problems. Yesterday, a lot of trade unions and bosses of companies had to meet with Kwesi Kwarteng, the Secretary of Business, complaining bitterly about the fact that most of these apps are tracking workers, pinging them, and they need to go into isolation. So that will dampen productivity. What's your take on that? And secondly, the EU has pushed back, saying Britain cannot change the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Okay. Northern Ireland Protocol, that is still, I know they've pushed back, but that's still a matter of discussion. I think we've been through the whys and wherefores of that quite thoroughly well, we certainly did yesterday, and we've certainly over the past months as well. It's down to negotiation. Yes, they pushed back, and we will push back again. It's in discussion at the moment, so I think it's too early to draw any conclusions about that. It is a ragged, leftover thing from a deal which was supposed to have happened, was brought forward date instead of data, I'm suspecting, on Christmas Eve last year, and now we're reaping the lack of benefit from that, and the fact that it needs to be actually tied down. As far as the pingdemic is concerned, yes, I mean what we're also seeing is now empty shelves in some supermarkets. Apparently, some fuel drivers are not turning up for work. It's clumsy because if I were to suffer from COVID, touch wood, I'm not suffering from it right now, but if I were, then one other person whom I most recently met would get pinged saying that. So that could mean two of us. Now, that multiple of 100% extra per person who has fallen COVID is actually affecting delivery of utilities, electricity workers, oil, fuel workers, and now it's really affecting supply chains. This is what needs to be decided. So, as I've said all along about this, it will come to a point where the politicians have to say to the scientists, yeah, thanks very much for all the information. Now we're going to make some real decisions about it. We've been talking about this all the way through the pandemic, haven't we? It's whether it's safety or whether it's economic survival. And I mean, that's really what's at the bottom line of all this concern right now.
Well, Michael, will it be right now to confirm that Elon Musk is a confirmed hypocrite with regard to Bitcoin? He goes back and forth, and now he says he has fresh information. Is it likely to come up tomorrow and say, oh, Bitcoin is no longer acceptable as payment? And, of course, the market has responded from what he said. So it looks like he's manipulating the market. Secondly, Bezos, after that 10 minutes, 10 seconds flight to outer space, is thanking Amazon staff and customers like us, and he say, oh, we made it possible. I mean, what do you make of that? Particularly considering the fact that this is not a man who is committed to the interests of either customers or staff. We have the background of the protests in Alabama. Those workers who tried to unionize, and they were shut down, and they complained about work hours and all that. So these worthy boys, they just come around and they shoot from the wrong end of the mouth. Are you on their side or on our side with the ordinary people?
As far as very rich people telling the rest of the world how to behave, I think I'm on your side about that. I would say, no thanks. You carry on as you wish, but we will take no notice of you. I do find Elon Musk, and I've often said this, if he were operating in this country, there would be a lot of officials actually feeling his collar and saying, actually, do you know what? You cannot manipulate the market like that. He's doing it with Bitcoin. This is the problem, isn't it? That it looks very attractive, but if the volatility, if its movement is affected by the words of one man like this, and it happens to have brought it up yesterday, as you're absolutely right, he could say something tomorrow, and the price of it would go down again. It's not a repository for wealth. It's a speculative play. Provided you see it as that, do as you wish. If you want to make a lot of money and you feel as though you do as you wish. With freedom comes self-responsibility. If you want to go ahead, do that. As far as Bezos is concerned, remember there's two sides to this. Yes, he's very rich. Will he look after his employees? Possibly. I don't know. Depends on the regional variations. Depends on a lot of things. There are opening centres in the UK, and there are big concerns from the workers or the people who might be employed as to what the working conditions might be. However, he did in the United States raise the minimum wage, which actually annoyed a lot of other people who could not afford to do that. In other words, employers in companies who could not afford to do that. So it works both ways. And remember, the most important thing from Alabama, if I may say so, is not so much that the company defeated the workers. The workers themselves did not wish to take on the responsibility of sitting on the board and guiding the company. That's the trick. If you can do that and say, yeah, okay, we understand that commerce is about winning and losing, we will take responsibility for that as workers. But they didn't. That's, I think, one of the lessons from Alabama, not so much the employers versus the employees, but it's the employees not willing to take on commercial responsibility. And they should do that. You should do that in every company.
Well, thank you very much, Michael Wilson. Thank you very much indeed.
All right. We'll go to our own Rotus, Odiri Rotus. How are you? Good morning. Great to have you.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Yeah. Good morning, Adeso. Good morning to all our viewers. We kick off with the NNPC. The NNPC, I mean, we've been talking about this for a while, but then putting more numbers to it. Investigations by this day newspaper, Nigeria's newspaper of record, show that the NNPC has had its allocations to the Federation accounts, Federal Allocation FAC, Allocation Committee, is at a shortfall of 63%. So far, between January and May, 613 billion was all supposed to have been remitted over to the Federation account. They've only been able to remit 225 so far. On a monthly basis, the net allocation from the state oil company, NNPC, to the Federation account should be about 122 billion. January, they're only able to remit 90 billion. February, only able to remit 64 billion. March, 41 billion. April, 0. They didn't remit anything in April. May, 29 billion. So again, it's the continued conversation around under recovery, what it is costing the NNPC. They're not able to remit all they can to the Federation account because they're spending so much covering the cost of the difference between the pump price of fuel and what it actually should be from the landing cost. And there you have it. Plus, there are also other projects that are not being able to be funded. So that's from the NNPC. Front page on today's This Day. To the Economist Intelligence Unit, the EIU, they are forecasting in a new country report on Nigeria that the federal government is going to be forced to raise value-added tax, VAT, to 15% by 2025, maybe even before 2025. And it's a forecast from them based on our revenues. If you look at Nigeria's 2020 budget performance, we underperformed when it came to non-oil revenue. Non-oil revenue, of course, being made up of, VAT, taxes, corporate tax, corporate income tax, and VAT, and everything else. So our budget benchmarks that we put there, those where we underperformed. So they're saying that it's going to be in stages. The way that they guess this is going to happen. I'm also looking at images of Zainab Ahmed, finance minister, who's talked a lot about VAT in the past. They're saying there could be a hike in 2022, which I think is very interesting, as that would come right before elections. I personally doubt that's going to happen, but they're saying a slight hike in 2022, another one in 2024, and then the final one in 2025. Remember, we were at 5% for so long, moved to 7.5%. Even at 7.5% VAT, we have one of the lowest rates in the world, and we have to raise revenue at all points. Again, election season, who wants to campaign on raising taxes? So again, it's going to be I think it's going to have a very fascinating election season, especially with so much to discuss on the economy. And I'm very interested to see what the points from the opposition party would be in terms of criticizing the government and what solutions they will bring forward, especially in terms of this matter of revenues and VAT. So once again, the Economist Intelligence Unit saying that they're projecting a hike to 15% by 2025 in marginal stages. So 2022, 2024, and then 2025. So we'll see how that works out. Once again, 2020 budget, 97% of revenues went towards debt servicing, and we're projecting almost 50% for the next 4 years. So debt is still a big issue. So Ajaokuta Steel, Minister Olamilekan Adegbite, Minister of Mines, Steel and Development, he was at a forum, the News Agency of Nigeria Forum, and he said that the Ajaokuta Steel will become operational before the president leaves office by 2023. This 2023 target seems to be the favorite of a number of ministers in the administration, where they keep using it as a target to getting things done. Remember, even yesterday, we talked about NNPC saying that the Port Harcourt refinery will marginally start producing refined products by end of 18 months from now, but hopefully the end of next year or so. Well, Ajaokuta Steel, again, President Buhari met with Putin 2019 when Russia was flexing its geopolitical muscles and called all the African leaders from around the world for a forum. They said, apparently they talked about Ajaokuta Steel. A 60-man technical delegation was supposed to come from Russia to Nigeria in 2020 to review Ajaokuta Steel because they built it, and apparently they're the only ones that can fix it. But they couldn't make it to Nigeria because of the COVID pandemic, and so, well, there you have it. So he's saying that Ajaokuta Steel, again, with its potential, could have produced, Minister Adegbite was saying it can produce liquid steel, which can be used to produce airplanes. Also, there's, vehicles, so much potential. But, again, in 6 years of this administration, we're only just now saying that, I guess, this is the point at which it will become operational. He didn't say to what capacity, whether it will be full capacity or not. But again, there's another promise for you to stick on the wall. The Ajaokuta Steel will become operational before 2023. We'll all be here, and we'll see if that happens. To South Africa, I talked about South Africa's inflation figures coming out. So it did, in fact, decelerate in June, year-on-year, in headline inflation for South Africa to 4.9% from 5.2 in the month of May. As essentially, like I said, the rand did appreciate. And so South Africans, I guess, were protected from inflation on that end. But we still saw increases in household utilities, transportation, slight food here and there. But South Africa's inflation year on year for June is at 4.9%. Still on South Africa, in fact, we're going to end with South Africa. The South African Reserve Bank, their own MPC meeting is taking place today, where they will be making a decision on their benchmark interest rate. With inflation coming down, analysts doubt that South Africa will be doing anything to move their benchmark interest rate, which is at 3.5% right now. So don't see any reason for them to raise rates. I think it will still be steady as she goes as far as the South African benchmark interest rate is concerned. And then the riots, things are slowly coming back to normal, I guess, as far as security agencies are concerned. But the damage assessment, I talked about this with Tam Sakazu yesterday, our RISE correspondent in London, and the estimated damage for the riots is at $3.4 billion. So it's quite hefty, the price tag of the damage around South Africa. And we'll see how the rebuilding efforts take place going forward. That's our Africa Business Update. Yeah.
Okay. Roses, I just wanted to ask you, I mean, I don't think it comes as a surprise that a lot of governments around the world are turning to taxation with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and, of course, loss in revenues. But for Nigeria, with such tepid growth, what are the likely implications of this? And it seems like the consumers are at the receiving end all the time when we find ourselves in these very harsh conditions.
Excellent question, Adeswa. And that's the thing. If you think of this administration has been, unfortunately, 2 recessions now. Though if you go back to 81, 82, 83, Buhari has now been in every recession since he's been president in history in this country. So he's been unlucky to the point to where he's constrained to, raising VAT taxes, because as you've just said, the disposable incomes of the average Nigerian have been squeezed. Let me look at what inflation is, 17.9%. So there's little to no room to increase taxes. But then, they had, look, this is like the subsidy issue, right? They could have done this in 2012 when the Jonathan administration was in power. Taxes could have been addressed ages ago when Nigeria was growing at, 6-7%, 2012, 2013. Well, of course, this administration wasn't in power then. I should, point that out. But, unfortunately, yeah, they're between a rock and a hard place, because you raise taxes now, people will respond in angry fashion. But then your revenues are where they are. They are very low. You have to do something. So that's why we're seeing that projection of them having to do something.
With regard to Ajaokuta Steel Company, I think it is yet another metaphor of the Nigerian situation. And it is very sad that today, in 2021, we're still talking about Ajaokuta Steel and what government wants to do about it. Minister Adigbite is saying, yes, before the end of the Buhari administration, Ajaokuta Steel will be up and running. Well, he's making the same promise that his predecessors made. What is the guarantee that will happen? Now, Ajaokuta Steel, yes, in terms of the projections, in terms of the vision, was supposed to be a major game changer for Nigeria. Was it not the Russians? Yes, the Russians, who originally were part of the project. Every administration, since that project was initiated, have been making promises one after the other, but it is a spectacle of waste and disappointment for Nigerians, despite all the potentials that have been advertised. I would rather have preferred Minister Lekan Adigbite talking to us about efforts that have been made to deal with the issues, the outstanding issues with the concessionaires. I think there's a company called GINL that has issues with the Nigerian government. Has that been resolved? The other issues with regard to funding, have they also been resolved? So it's not enough to just come forward and say, oh, by 2022, by 2023, you will have Ajaokuta functioning. I think the guy was just talking, off his heart, more or less. He probably doesn't even understand the subject. And there are persons who are arguing that, look, we had an experience with Element Petrochemicals. The government of Nigeria decided to just privatize Element Petrochemicals. Within 6 months, Indorama was able to turn Element Petrochemicals around. Now, those persons who are that view have also been saying that with Ajaokuta, maybe what we should do is just to go ahead, resolve the encumbrances, and then privatize it and see how somebody, who has the willpower, this thing they call PPP, private sector and, government cooperation, can turn the place around and be able to realize the full potential. So government officials, they have an occasion, they just talk. By 2022, before 2023, it will be ready. I think that's what Lekan Adigbite is doing in this instance. He needs to be further educated on the subject and the challenges that we face. As for the EIU report and the possibility of value-added tax being increased by 100% in Nigeria, well, where does that leave us as citizens? You have said it. You say it's a forecast. Like all these prophets saying Arsenal will beat Barcelona, But if it happens, where does that really leave us? The Nigerian government needs revenue. We're running a budget deficit. Locally, the argument is that VAT in Nigeria is one of the lowest in the world or in Africa, and that we have not met the target. But we have other issues, other risks. I'm sure that Economic Intelligence Unit report must have talked about likely risks. We have COVID, we have all kinds of challenges, we have a budget deficit that is high, we have issues, with government management. You then go and increase VAT, and then you threaten also to increase pump price of fuel up to about 256 naira per liter. That would be a prescription for chaos. But the Economic Intelligence Unit, the boys that are behind it, yes, they are analysts. They do permutations. And I think what is important is the policy end of it. What kind of policy implications, will come out of all of these projections, either from NNPC or from the Economic Intelligence Unit of the Economist magazine.
So for me, my question, and the question I think the formative question we should ask is that, why is it that everything government has done in the steel industry has failed? In the 70s, they started something called the Katsina Rolling Mill. Failed. Maybe they've sold it over now to Dana Group. In the 80s, they started DSC in Onwe Alaja. Failed. They started the Ajaokuta Steel Plant. Failed. These three areas, these three institutions were supposed to be part of Nigeria's industrial move. And they failed woefully. So I think apart from everything, the formative question should be, why did Katsina, why did Onwe Alaja, and why did Ajaokuta fail? The moment we answer that question, that can then lead us to what will be the direction for Ajaokuta that we're thinking of reviving. What will probably be the direction for Ascon, I think it was Inikota Basi, the ceramic company. What will also be the direction for the refineries? And I think since we are not answering those formative questions of why is it that those colossal investments failed, then we will never get anywhere. We saw how it happened with DSC and the likes.
No,
Secondly, for me, the big question is this, as regards what is happening in South Africa. What can we learn? We had a riot. What is the insurance policy in place? Let's juxtapose that with what happened in Germany. That flood took away homes and the likes and all of that in Germany. It is believed, and now from the reports coming out, 46% of German homeowners have home insurance. So the insurance company will get to pay for most of the losses for the homes for the flood. And just immediately after that happened, the federal government in Germany, out of the Bundestag in Berlin, put aside 200 million euros, and the regions, the states, because that happened in the Rhineland-Palatinate states, put another counterpart funding of 240 million euros. And that counterpart funding, 450 million euros, will be given to the victims of those flooding. So in the space of 2, 3, 4 days, there's financial succor and there is insurance kicking. But what is that when disasters happen in Africa, we don't get adequate insurance backing because a lot of businesses are not insured. And there's nothing that comes from the states. I mean, just imagine, Rotus, a regional government can bring out 250 million euros in capital for a disaster. And guess what the Germans did say when this happened? They said that's why people pay their taxes. Rotus, I rest my case.
No, I think it's not too difficult to
said.
find out
Well
why
said.
it is very difficult for the Nigerian government to revive the aluminium smelter company in Ekora.
Yeah, aluminium, thank you, sir. Yeah.
And also the Ajaokuta Steel Company or the steel company in Alaja. It is government involvement. And that was why I referred earlier on to the Element Petrochemicals when the Indians, their company in Dorama, took over. For as long as you have all these government players, giving us rhetorical promises and getting involved and saying that they can do a miracle, no, it will not happen. And that's why you have the example of the Aliko Dangote, 650,000 barrels per day, refinery that is building. And everybody is excited about it because it will be managed professionally. It will be managed, we expect, in a manner that will be to the interest of Nigeria. And that's why the Nigerian government should not seek more than 20%. They should allow the private sector, to do it, to provide the necessary leadership. We have been told the aluminium company in Ikora will also be on stream before 2023. No, they have no clue.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Abati.
Thank you, Rotus. I just don't know how Arsenal made it to Dr. Abati's metaphorical expression this morning. Why Arsenal had to be dragged in this morning. But thank you so much, Rotus.
All right, Aliswa, over to you.
Yes, the Delta variant of the coronavirus is expected to become a dominant variant across the globe, and that's according to the World Health Organization. The WHO is warning that further 13 territories detected cases of this highly transmissible variant. The highly contagious strain has now been discovered in 124 territories, according to the WHO. The latest figures, according to the Johns Hopkins University, there on your screen, over 192 million cases, at least 4.1 million deaths, and over 3.7 billion vaccine doses administered. Here in Nigeria, let's look at some of the latest figures coming in. 238 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. Lagos again posted 181 of the total tally. We've also seen at least 2 COVID-19 related deaths recorded in the country. In Uganda, government officials say at least 800 people were given fake COVID-19 vaccines in a scam that involved unscrupulous doctors and health workers. The fraudsters, according to officials, targeted people looking to pay for immunization, including corporate employees. at a time when vaccines were in short supply in the country. According to the director of the Health Services Monitoring Unit under the presidency, the scammers charged recipients between $25 to $120, and that's an equivalent of 80,000 and 500,000 Uganda shillings. He added that the test conducted revealed that the vials contained nothing dangerous, just water. Pfizer and BioNTech have said they have struck a deal for South Africa's BioVac Institute to process and distribute over 100 million doses of a year of their COVID-19 vaccines for the African Union beginning next year. It's the first of its kind for the Pfizer vaccine. BioVac won't produce the jab from scratch. It will only import the drug substance, that's the active ingredient, which makes the jab work, from Europe. It will then do what is called a fill and finish. That's packaging the jab in South Africa. Meanwhile, a new study says 2 doses of the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines are almost as effective against the highly transmissible Delta variant as they are against the previously dominant Alpha variant. The study, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, found that 2 doses of Pfizer shot was 88% effective at preventing symptomatic disease from the Delta variant. This is slightly down from the 93.7% efficacy against the Alpha variant. Meanwhile, 2 shots of AstraZeneca vaccines were 67% effective against the Delta variant. Finally, after about a week, China has responded to the WHO claims and plans for a second study into the origin of COVID-19. National Health Commission Vice Minister Zheng Jinzhen at a press conference says China is shocked by the proposal as it contains language that does not, in his words, respect science, and China opposes politicizing the study into the origin. You would recall that last week, the WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus announced a 5-part plan for follow-up research on the origins of the coronavirus, including a suspected lab leak.
So one thing is certain, we cannot move away from the theory of Wuhan lab in all of this. And China can't run away from it. I don't know when they're going to come home to roost, but somebody has to tell us the truth what happened in that lab. Because it's evident from the strain and the way it's evolved as a virus, and we have historical antecedents to it, that viruses can jump out of a lab as a result of sequencing and the likes. And there were, copious notes and evidence that work was being done on certain viruses in the in the Wuhan lab. I think it was the 70s, this happened in Marburg in Germany. Work was being done in the lab too. Viruses jumped out of the lab, affected a lot of people. I think it was called Marburg virus. I have a brain freeze of that, but there was something that came out of a lab in Germany in the 70s. And in analyzing this and in looking at this critically, China needs to come out and tell us where to go so that at least we can find a way to stop this and stem this. Because the virus is mutating, a lot of more people are getting affected. We're talking about Delta virus. Now, the beta strain, the beta variant, has come upstream again. GISAD, the collective bank where a lot of countries send in their sequencing, they discovered that most of the people that were infected in France had about 3.7% of those numbers were the beta variant. And that's to show you that the beta variant, too, just across the channel, is rearing its ugly head. Because, a lot of British people on holidays, the quick, safe bet for them is to go to France. Like a witness in France on holidays. And there's a fear that a lot of them might be coming back with this same beta strain out of France. So if we can trace it effectively to go back to where all of this started from, and let's not demonize China by calling it the Chinese virus or anything. It's safer for the world to be able to know this because the world is split along the lines. Now we have fights about intellectual property. Nations don't want to give intellectual property. They're saying the best deal we can do, just like they signed off in South Africa recently, is fill and finish. So you can do fill and finish out of the labs in South Africa and spread this vaccine all over Africa. Some people don't want to sell their intellectual property. Scientists have not been able to crack the challenge of a polyvariant vaccine because the strains will keep mutating. We heard about the story in Belgium about 2 different strains, mutations, in somebody's body that led to the person's death. So in all of this, there is no how we're not going to draw the map and we're still going to go back to Wuhan and ask very important questions. How was the Wuhan lab run? The same Wuhan lab that was built with, I think, French money, and the Chinese said, okay, it's ours, we'll take it, we'll run it from here. Well, what happened in the Wuhan lab? Those are the formative questions.
Yes, I think the point to be made here is that, yes, there was an investigation earlier this year. Researchers were sent by the WHO to China.
Yes.
They were restricted. The Chinese insisted on their own terms of investigation. Then they came out with conclusions that had been generally regarded as tentative, even by the World Health Organization itself. And when the G7 met in England, one of the resolutions that there was a need was that there was a need for another investigation. The WHO also concurred, and also in the US Parliament, this has been the issue. I think what we can say very clearly is that the Chinese authorities must realize that this is about global public health. And the issue is about determining the origin, the exact origin of the COVID virus, the coronavirus, so as to prevent the future of humanity. So in this regard, it's not about sovereignty. It's not about China saying we reject another investigation. It's a moral question and the place of China within the global community. That's a big point in that regard. As for Uganda, yes, the other day you brought a story in which you talked about one other country where they were administering saline solutions.
Canada.
Okay? In Canada, which you would think is a developed country where such a thing would not happen. But here in Uganda, we should place it in context. This administration of fake vaccines occurred when there was a sudden surge in the infection rate in Uganda. Uganda suddenly found itself having cases of about over 500 per day, although it has gone down now to about 252. The total infection rate is over 95,000. Death rate is over 2,425. But this issue happened. And what other countries in Africa should learn from this example is that, look, if the death rate goes up, people will be desperate. There will be people who will also try to take advantage of the situation. But in our case here in Nigeria, the Presidential Steering Committee and various state governments had made it clear that people should take the vaccine only from designated centers.
Yes.
And I think that is one big lesson we should take from it. No matter how desperate the situation may be, because we don't know how the Delta variant will play out in Nigeria, don't go to roadside area boys claiming to be medical experts, running funny pharmaceutical centers to take COVID vaccine. Because that's exactly what happened in Uganda. Yeah. And a lot of people took water thinking that they were taking the vaccine. But the good news, as you pointed out correctly, is that it's not dangerous. Nobody would die as a result of it. Now, South Africa. You also brought a story from South Africa. Yes, South Africa is facing serious crisis with regard to unemployment, with regard to COVID third wave, and all of that. But Pfizer and BioNTech trying to produce COVID-19 jabs in South Africa, I think is a welcome development. It falls under the same fill and finish program that we had seen previously with Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson has a sterile facility, they call it, in Durban, South Africa, where they have a target of producing this year alone 430 million jabs. And they have this collaboration with an American facility in Baltimore. Yeah. So South Africa now is providing leadership in having 2 fill and finish programs. And this is the only country in Africa at the moment that has it on location, on site, in country. And the whole idea is that it will not only benefit South Africa, the African Union will also be able to take vaccines from these 2 facilities. The Aspen Laboratory in a place well, I don't know how to pronounce them. I think it's in Port Elizabeth.
Yeah.
The name is a bit difficult. And then this new one that is being brought by
BioVac.
Pfizer and BioNTech, I think it will help Africa, and I hope that the African Union will buy into it, and that it will help the vaccination rate in Africa. The other issue is about technology transfer. South Africa and India led the process about the demand for, copyright,
Yes.
exchange of copyright, the lifting of the ban on intellectual property rights with regard to COVID-19 vaccines. But what you have seen now is, consistent with the decision that was taken by the European Union to say that, look, country basis negotiations can happen. And this may well be the way forward. But where is Nigeria in all of this? Don't we have any factory in this country where they can produce vaccine? I thought we were told that in the 1960s, we were producing vaccines in Oshodi. They will just come every week. They will give us an update. Why are they not thinking ahead? Why are they not learning from the example of South Africa? Is it so difficult in Nigeria to fill and finish? The only thing we fill and finish here are Tokumbo vehicles. we should be able to fill vaccines.
Fill and finish Tokumbo vehicles. I mean, the sad part of it, Dr. Mati, like you said, is even our vaccine candidates, what have been done to our vaccine candidates?
$1 billion question. Well, thank you so much, guys.